some time back, some friends and I, we were at a Halloween, we were at a New Year's party. It was like 3-4 years ago, and we all decided to pick a word for the year. My word was believe, and it has still been my word 4 years later. The quote for today is, "Believe you can and you're halfway there." That is by the late great Theodore Roosevelt. I think that's a really pertinent quote. Belief is a very powerful tool. If you're struggling with things today, don't forget to just believe. I know that's easier said than done. The Critical Drinker, really great guy, amazing reviews. He has some great takes. So I have some things to say. This is kind of on point with what's happening. Recognizable IP being shoved down our throats and reused over and over and over in order to make money. Let's have a go.
Wow, I guess time really does make fools of us all. The first Joker movie was one of those rare moments of cinematic serendipity where everything that should have been wrong somehow came together to become absolutely right. A low-budget origin story about a Batman villain that nobody asked for, directed by a guy best known for making comedies that proved the law of diminishing returns, and shadowed by media accusations of promoting violence, misogyny, and generalized buffoonery. It was a film that seemingly had everything going against it, but somehow turned out way better than it had any right to be. In a sea of oversaturated CGI sludge, the Joker dared to tell a small, intimate, complex story of a man pushed into madness and despair by a society that was blindly indifferent to him. A movie with a wonderfully unreliable narrator, driven by a superb performance by Joaquin Phoenix, and an ending that left the audience with more questions than answers. It was a perfect one and done movie that told its story and told it well. No need to do anything more with a character like that because it would just cheapen the experience. So, like the rest of you, I was a bit perplexed when I found out that Joker was getting a sequel, and even more concerned when it was announced as a musical co-starring Lady Gaga. But just like everyone else, I tried to suppress my doubts and ignore that nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach that this movie was fundamentally a bad idea. Surely to goodness Todd Phillips knows what he's doing and wouldn't just shout out some lame cash grab sequel that undermines the integrity of the original, right?
Wrong.
Then I sat down and watched it. And if all 2.5 hours of Joker folie à deux proves anything at all, it's that sometimes you really ought to listen to your instincts. Yeah, there's definitely good elements in there. You can see that talented people were working on this movie, and the ending is definitely going to get people talking. But overall, Joker 2 felt like a dull, bloated, and ultimately unnecessary movie that failed to answer the question that's dogged it since the beginning. Why does this film even exist? Now, I know it's just come out, and I don't want to spoil it for people, so I'm going to keep my plot summary short and sweet, unlike this fucking movie. So with that in mind, let's go. The story picks up shortly after the events of the first...
He talks about story. Okay, we're going to get into that now, but I have something to say. Human beings have been telling stories since the dawn of time. Okay, since cavemen were writing cave paintings on the wall or drawing cave paintings on the wall, to Egyptians using hieroglyphics to tell their stories, to the Bible, to the Romans, to the Greeks. We all tell stories. It's what's kind of built into the human race. It's how we disseminate information. It's how we pass information down through generations. It's almost hardwired into us to be able to tell stories accurately. That's a very important role to be played within movies, because that's exactly what movies are, is stories being told from a perspective of directors and writers. And back in the days when movies were relatively new, there was a lot of freedom and a lot of creativity, because a lot of the times none of the stuff had been done before. People really explored a lot of avenues that were interesting to a lot of different people, and that really caught on, and it sparked human imagination, which is why movies are so important to us, because they can teach us things, they can instill feelings, they can literally change the world if the movie is powerful enough. That's what the power of storytelling really is. The problem that comes into being here, and we talked about this a couple days ago, with when you involve money into franchises and stories that are told just for profit, you begin to lose a sense of personalization, a sense of connecting or connection with your audience. Telling a narrative that can really instill some kind of emotive response. people may not agree with me here, but movies like Interstellar, The Matrix, the first 3 Star Wars, so many other movies, The Usual Suspects, The Professional. You ever had that moment? You go watch a movie, you come out of it, and the next day you wake up and you're still thinking about that movie. That's a rare thing. Corporates and studios who are very detached from their audience tend to just throw money at a script because they see the success of one movie, aka Joker 1, which won an Academy Award, and then it becomes the worst sequel in cinema history. The score currently on Rotten Tomatoes is 31%. Also, its cinema score is even worse. Joker earns a D cinema score, lowest comic book movie ever. Madam Web, supposedly better than the Joker 2.
Film where Arthur Fleck has been arrested and locked up in Arkham Asylum while he awaits trial for all the murders that he committed. His lawyer wants to plead insanity while the prosecutor Harvey Dent's pushing for the death penalty. Bad times indeed. But while he's at Arkham, he meets a young woman named Lee Quinn and soon starts a bit of a romance with her. But is it really Arthur that she's into, or his Joker personality? And what's her true motivation for being there? Well, you'll have to wait and find out. Anyway, the case goes to trial and Arthur's soon confronted by the reality of what he did in the first film by going over most of the key events again. But how responsible was he for what happened? Was the Joker really a split personality that took over him, or just part of him all along? And what will Harley Quinn think of him when she finds out the truth? Joker 2 is kind of a frustrating movie to watch because in a lot of ways I can see how hard many of the people involved are trying to make it work. Joaquin Phoenix delivers the same intense, compelling performance as the first movie, arguably a bit too similar, but we'll get into that one in a minute. The point is though, he's definitely given the role his all and some of his scenes are genuinely compelling. Lady Gaga, much to my surprise, also turns in a good performance as a crazy superfan enamored by the flamboyant persona of the Joker rather than the flesh and blood man behind it. And if you're inclined to look for themes in this film, it's an interesting insight into the intoxicating danger of celebrity and the vast gulf between myth and reality. The two actors play well off each other and the kind of twisted romance they cultivate seems pretty appropriate for a movie like this, and the film even has you questioning which of their interactions even happened for real. It doesn't do it as effectively as the first movie, but it's something at least. The thing is, I'm pretty sure that the comic version of Quinn was more like the Joker's plaything rather than a manipulative femme fatale stringing him along, but again, it probably fits with what we know about this version of.
This is also a great point. There's nothing wrong with altering stories. You don't want to see a carbon copy of things you've read or seen, right? When you watch a comic book movie or you watch a book adaptation or anything like that, you want to see the twists. You want to see someone's take on the film, or, you know, whatever perspective they have, or how they want to change a character to be a little different. I think that's a cool part about some adaptations that can come across really well and actually make the story even more interesting than it already was. But trying to force characters to do stuff just for the sake of doing it can ruin a really great story
of Joker. And I guess that brings me along to my criticisms, the biggest of which is the deconstruction of Arthur himself. The ending of the first movie saw him fully embrace his Joker persona, shedding the last remnants of his old, weak, victimized personality and embracing the madness of the world around him. It was a logical endpoint for a man who had been desperately trying to swim against the tide for most of the film, and it was kind of cathartic to see him finally let go. It was a final fuck you to the world that had kicked him to the ground again and again. A world reduced to fire and chaos. All of that good work seems to have been undone here because for most of the film he's reverted to the same weak, timid Arthur that he was at the start of the first movie. And I can't shake the feeling that there's something almost mean-spirited in that kind of deconstruction, as if they're taking a swipe at the audience themselves for liking someone they weren't supposed to. I don't know, man, it just feels like character regression instead of development for me. Then there's the musical numbers that pepper the narrative. I can't believe I'm saying this because normally I fucking hate musicals, but I actually kind of enjoyed the sheer spectacle and performances while I was watching them.
Ha!
Gay! And Lady Gaga clearly doesn't have any trouble belting out her numbers. But the more I think about it, the more I see them as shiny objects trying to distract from what's actually a pretty stodgy, bloated and uninspiring drama. The courtroom scenes are basically just a dry recap of the first film, telling us things that we mostly already know, and destroying that awesome sense of ambiguity and unreality that made it such a fascinating story to pick apart. Now we know exactly what did and didn't happen, and shit.
Man, I am also so tired of Batman / Joker movies. Like, I really am. I think it should have ended with The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight trilogy is, I'll catch some flack for this, is probably one of the greatest comic book movies or sagas ever made. Look, we can try and compare it to the Infinity Saga, but you know, there were still some bad movies within the Infinity Saga's 20 movie run. 20 movies. Holy crap, that's a crazy amount of movies. Keep it dark, keep it gritty, tell real stories. Tell stories of human characters. How do you make Superman relatable? Being who's omnipotent, a relatable character. So you bring out his humanity, you bring out his flaws, you bring out his love for his mother, that he can still love human beings, that, you know, deep down his weakness is his kindness. I mean, I'm sure you've all watched Man of Steel, but for me, Man of Steel is also, throughout the movie, you connect with him so deeply on a human level. Comic book movies aren't based in reality, but when you're looking at a movie like Joker, making you relate to a psychopath, hurt and burnt by the world. Some movies don't need a remake. You know, trying to force a story is just, it just breaks it, right?
Man, it feels like such a waste. And most disappointingly of all, I actually find myself kind of bored and checked out at times, something that absolutely never happened with the original movie. As I said before, the question hanging over Joker 2 was, is this a story that really needed to be told, or is it just a bunch of talented people doing their best to elevate a studio-mandated sequel into something that it isn't? Well, now that I've seen it, I'm afraid I know the answer, and it's not a good one. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.
I don't want to know what the ending is, because a lot of people are complaining about the ending of this movie. I don't know. Have you seen it? Let me know your thoughts on if you've seen the movie or not.